This decision changed everything, a stoic story. Imagine waking up every morning feeling trapped. Your mind is full of fear. Every mistake from yesterday follows you like a shadow. Every opinion from other people controls your emotions. Deep inside, you know something has to change, but you don't know what. This is the story of a man named Ethan. Ethan was not weak. He worked hard, cared for his family, and tried his best. Yet every day felt like a battle he could never win. One harsh comment from a stranger ruined his entire day. One failure at work convinced him he wasn't good enough. He constantly compared himself to people who seemed happier, richer, and more successful. One evening, after another difficult day, Ethan sat alone in a quiet park. An elderly man dressed in a simple suit sat beside him. "You look troubled," the old man said. "I've tried everything," Ethan replied. "Nothing changes." The old man smiled. "Your life doesn't change until your decisions change." Those words stayed with Ethan. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept repeating them in his mind. Your life doesn't change until your decisions change. The next morning, Ethan made one decision. He decided to stop blaming the world. It sounded simple, but it was the hardest thing he had ever done. Whenever something went wrong, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he asked, "What can I control?" At first, nothing looked different. The same traffic. The same difficult boss. The same bills. The same problems. But something inside him had begun to change. He remembered the Stoic teaching. You cannot control events, but you can control your response. Days turned into weeks. Instead of arguing, he listened. Instead of complaining, he worked. Instead of worrying about tomorrow, he focused on today's actions. Slowly, people noticed. His co-workers respected him. His family felt more peaceful around him. Most importantly, Ethan finally respected himself. One afternoon, another employee received the promotion Ethan wanted. The old Ethan would have become angry. The new Ethan smiled. He congratulated his co-workers sincerely. Someone asked him, "Aren't you upset?" Ethan answered, "I don't control promotions. I control my character." That answer surprised everyone. Months later, an opportunity appeared that no one expected. His manager needed someone calm enough to lead an important project. Everyone thought of Ethan. Not because he was the smartest. Not because he was the loudest. But because he remained steady under pressure. His single decision had transformed everything. Not overnight. Not by luck. But through daily discipline. The lesson is simple. Your future isn't built by one giant leap. It's built by thousands of small decisions. Every morning you decide. Will I react with anger or respond with wisdom? Will I blame others or improve myself? Will I chase comfort or embrace discipline? These choices shape your character. The Stoics believe that character is your greatest possession because no one can take it from you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning that he would meet difficult people. Instead of expecting life to be easy, he prepared his mind to remain calm. That is real strength. Strength is not shouting. Strength is staying calm when everyone else loses control. Strength is choosing patience over revenge. Strength is choosing action over excuses. Every successful person reaches a moment where one decision changes everything. Not because the decision magically changes the world. Because it changes the person making it. So today, ask yourself, what decision have you been avoiding? Maybe it's deciding to stop making excuses. Maybe it's deciding to forgive someone. Maybe it's deciding to begin again after failure. Maybe it's deciding to become disciplined even when motivation disappears. Whatever it is, remember this. Your future self is waiting on the other side of one courageous decision. Years later, Ethan returned to the same park where he had met the old man. He sat on the same bench. The old man was gone. No one knew his name. But Ethan smiled. He realized the greatest gift the stranger had given him wasn't advice. It was responsibility. Because from that day forward, Ethan understood something that changed his life forever. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your decisions. And every great life begins with one simple choice. This decision changed everything. To be continued in Part 2, where Ethan faces his greatest test, when success, temptation, and betrayal challenge everything he has learned about Stoicism. Part 2, the hardest test of a Stoic. Success changes the battle. Months passed after Ethan made the decision that transformed his life. The promotion had come. His confidence had grown. People who once ignored him now sought his advice. Friends admired his calmness. His family noticed that he smiled more and complained less. For the first time in years, life seemed to be moving in the right direction. But Stoicism teaches an important truth. Your greatest test often comes after your first success. One Monday morning, Ethan arrived at work and discovered he had been chosen to lead the company's biggest project. It was an opportunity many people had dreamed about. Some congratulated him. Others smiled on the outside but secretly became jealous. One coworker, Victor, couldn't hide his bitterness. "He doesn't deserve this," Victor whispered to others. "He's just pretending to be wise." Rumors spread through the office. Some claimed Ethan was favored by management. Others questioned whether he was capable of leading such an important project. The old Ethan would have defended himself. He would have argued. He would have tried to prove everyone wrong. But the new Ethan remembered another Stoic principle. Never waste your energy fighting opinions you cannot control. Instead of answering the rumors, he focused on his work. Day after day, he arrived early. He listened carefully to his team. He encouraged those who struggled. He admitted his own mistakes instead of hiding them. Slowly, something unexpected happened. The rumors lost their power. Results spoke louder than words. The project began to succeed. Even the people who doubted him started respecting him. One evening, after everyone had left the office, Ethan sat alone reviewing reports. His phone rang. It was his younger brother. "Ethan," he said quietly, "Dad has been taken to the hospital." Everything stopped. Within minutes, Ethan was driving as fast as he safely could. As he entered the hospital, fear rushed into his heart. Doctors moved quickly through the halls. Machines beeped. Families waited anxiously. For a moment, Ethan felt panic rising. Then he remembered the lesson that had guided him since the day in the park. Control what you can. He couldn't control the illness. He couldn't control the outcome. But he could control how he showed up for his family. He stayed calm. He comforted his mother. He encouraged his brother. He spoke respectfully to every nurse and doctor. Hours later, the doctor finally came with good news. His father would recover. As they drove home, his father smiled weakly. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You stayed strong when everyone else was falling apart." Ethan realized something important. Real Stoicism isn't practiced during easy days. It is practiced when life hurts. Weeks later, another challenge appeared. A competitor offered Ethan a high-paying job. The salary was almost double. The benefits were incredible. But there was one condition. He would have to deceive clients to increase profits. No one would know. His friends told him to accept. "It's just business," they said. "Everyone does it." That night, Ethan sat quietly in his apartment. He looked into the mirror. He asked himself one question. What kind of man do I want to become? Money could change his lifestyle. But dishonesty would change his character. And Stoicism teaches that character is worth more than wealth. The next morning, Ethan declined the offer. His friends called him foolish. "You'll regret this." But deep inside, he felt peace. For the first time in his life, he understood that success without integrity is failure in disguise. Months passed. His company discovered how honest and loyal he had been. Instead of losing opportunities, even greater ones appeared. He was promoted again. Not because he chased money. Because he protected his principles. One evening, Ethan walked back to the same park where everything had begun. The bench was still there. The wind moved gently through the trees. He remembered the old man's words. Your life changes when your decisions change. Now he understood their full meaning. The biggest decision wasn't choosing success. It was choosing who he would become every single day. And he realized something that every Stoic eventually learns. Life will always test you. People will misunderstand you. Temptation will challenge you. Pain will visit you. But if you guard your character, no one can truly defeat you. He smiled toward the sunset. Not because life had become easy, but because he had become stronger than the difficulties around him. And that strength could never be taken away. Part 2. Betrayal, the test that revealed true strength. Months passed, and Ethan's life continued to improve. His work was thriving. His family was at peace. His confidence grew, not because everything was perfect, but because he had learned to master his reactions instead of trying to control the world. Yet Stoicism teaches that life will always present another test. This one would be the most painful. Ethan had a close friend named Daniel. They had known each other for years. They celebrated victories together, shared meals, and supported one another during difficult times. Ethan trusted him completely. One afternoon, Ethan discovered that Daniel had secretly taken credit for one of his biggest ideas at work. The project Ethan had spent months developing was now being praised as Daniel's achievement. The news hit him like a storm. His heart raced. His hands tightened into fists. The old Ethan wanted revenge. He imagined exposing Daniel in front of everyone. He imagined humiliating him the way he had been humiliated. But then another voice spoke inside him. It reminded him of the Stoic lesson he had practiced every day. Do not let another person's actions determine your character. That night, Ethan could not sleep. His mind replayed the betrayal again and again. The anger felt heavy. The disappointment hurt even more. At sunrise, instead of making an emotional decision, Ethan went for a long walk. As he watched the sun rise, he remembered something Marcus Aurelius often reflected on. The best revenge is not to become like the one who hurt you. Those words changed everything. Ethan realized he had two choices. He could become bitter, or he could become wiser. He chose wisdom. The next day, he met Daniel privately. He did not shout. He did not insult him. He calmly explained how deeply the betrayal had affected him. Daniel avoided eye contact. At first, he denied everything. But eventually, guilt overcame him. He admitted the truth. I was afraid, Daniel confessed. I thought if people saw how capable you were, I would be forgotten. For a moment, Ethan felt compassion instead of anger. He realized that many people hurt others because they are controlled by fear. That did not excuse Daniel's actions. But it helped Ethan understand them. Understanding is not weakness. It is clarity. The company eventually discovered what had happened. Daniel lost the recognition he had taken. Ethan received the credit that belonged to him. But something more important had happened. Ethan had protected his peace. He had refused to let betrayal destroy the person he was becoming. That evening, he sat quietly at home. He realized something profound. Pain is unavoidable. Bitterness is a choice. The days that followed were not easy. Some friends encouraged him to cut everyone out of his life. Others told him never to trust anyone again. But Ethan knew that closing his heart completely would only create another prison. Instead, he learned to trust wisely. He became more careful, more observant. Yet he remained kind. Because kindness guided by wisdom is strength. Weeks later, another challenge arrived. The company faced financial difficulties. Many employees panicked. Rumors spread that layoffs were coming. Fear filled every hallway. Some people blamed each other. Others stopped working hard. Ethan remained calm. He reminded his team. We cannot control the economy. We can control our effort, our honesty, and our attitude. His calmness spread. Instead of feeding fear, he inspired confidence. When management observed the situation, one thing stood out. While others reacted emotionally, Ethan remained steady. His composure helped the entire team stay focused. Months later, the company recovered. The leaders called Ethan into a meeting. They thanked him, not only for his work, but for his leadership during the hardest season. Walking home that evening, Ethan smiled. He understood another Stoic truth. Your greatest influence comes from your example, not your words. People rarely remember what you say. They remember how you behaved when life became difficult. Years earlier, Ethan believed strength meant never feeling pain. Now he understood. Strength means feeling pain without allowing it to control your actions. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Ethan whispered to himself, "Every hardship is another opportunity to practice virtue." He knew more challenges would come. Life would never stop testing him. But he no longer feared those tests. Because every challenge was shaping him into the person he wanted to become. And that was a victory no one could steal. End of Part 3. In Part 4, Ethan faces his greatest challenge yet, a devastating personal loss that forces him to answer one difficult question: how do you remain calm when life takes away someone you love? Part 4, The Greatest Loss, When Life Tests Your Soul. The months after Ethan's success were peaceful. His career was growing. His friendships had become stronger, and he had learned to let go of bitterness. Each challenge had made him wiser. But life has a way of reminding us that no amount of preparation can prevent pain. One rainy evening, Ethan received a phone call that would change everything. His father had collapsed unexpectedly. Without thinking, Ethan rushed to the hospital. The flashing lights, the hurried footsteps of doctors, and the worried faces of families filled the corridors. His heart pounded as he waited outside the emergency room. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the doctor stepped outside. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "We did everything we could." Ethan stood frozen. The world seemed to stop. His father, the man who had taught him to work hard, to keep his promises, and to stand with integrity, was gone. 4 days, Ethan felt an emptiness he had never known. Friends came to comfort him. Family members cried together. At night, the silence in his home was almost unbearable. He asked himself the question many people ask after losing someone they love: why did this happen? But no answer came. One morning, while looking through his father's old belongings, Ethan found a small notebook. Inside were handwritten notes. On one page, his father had written, "Life is not measured by how long we live, but by how well we live." Ethan read the sentence over and over again. He realized his father had lived with honesty, kindness, and courage. No one could take that away. That evening, Ethan sat alone in the same park where his journey had begun. He remembered another Stoic lesson. Everything we love is temporary. At first, that thought sounded sad. But then he understood its deeper meaning. Because life is temporary, every moment matters. Every conversation matters. Every act of kindness matters. Every opportunity to love matters. Instead of becoming bitter over what he had lost, Ethan chose to be grateful for what he had been given. The next weeks were still difficult. Some mornings he woke with tears in his eyes. Sometimes the simple memory of his father made him stop walking. The pain did not disappear. But Ethan stopped fighting the pain. He allowed himself to grieve. Stoicism had never taught him to ignore emotions. It taught him not to become their prisoner. Slowly, he returned to work. His coworkers noticed something different. He was quieter than before. But there was also a deeper compassion in him. When someone made a mistake, he responded with patience. When a coworker lost a loved one, Ethan stayed beside him for hours without saying much. Sometimes the greatest comfort is simply being present. Months later, Ethan visited his father's grave. He placed fresh flowers beside the stone. Instead of asking, "Why did you leave?" he whispered, "Thank you for the life you gave me. I will honor it by living well." As he walked away, he felt lighter. Not because the pain had disappeared, but because he had found purpose inside it. He understood something the old man in the park had wanted him to learn from the beginning. You cannot choose every event in your life. But you can always choose the person you become because of those events. From that day forward, Ethan made another decision. He would not waste his life waiting for perfect circumstances. He would tell people he loved them. He would forgive more quickly. He would spend less time worrying about things beyond his control. He would live with courage, gratitude, and discipline. Years later, people often asked Ethan the secret to his calmness. He never claimed to have all the answers. He simply smiled and said, "Life taught me that everything can change in a single moment. That's why I choose to focus on what truly matters." His father's memory stayed with him every day, not as a source of sadness, but as a reminder to live with purpose. And Ethan realized the deepest lesson of Stoicism. You cannot stop loss. You cannot stop time. But you can choose to meet both with dignity, wisdom, and courage. That was the greatest victory of all. End of Part 4. Part 5. The Final Decision. Character over Power. Years had passed since Ethan first sat on the old bench in the park. He was no longer the anxious man who worried about every opinion or feared every setback. Through discipline, patience, and countless trials, he had become someone others looked to for guidance. But the greatest test of his life was still waiting. One autumn morning, Ethan received an invitation from one of the largest companies in the country. They had followed his work for years and wanted him to become their new executive director. The position came with everything people dream about: a luxurious home, a high salary, prestige, influence, the power to shape the future of thousands of employees. Friends celebrated the news. "This is your moment," they said. "You've earned it." At first, Ethan believed the same. But during the final interview, he learned something disturbing. One of the executives explained that the company often hid important information from customers to increase profits. "It isn't illegal," the executive said with a smile. "It's simply how business works." Ethan remained silent. His mind returned to the lessons that had transformed his life. He remembered the old man in the park. He remembered his father's notebook. He remembered every painful lesson that had taught him the value of integrity. That night, he walked through the quiet streets alone. The city lights sparkled around him, but his heart was heavy. He asked himself a single question: what is success if it costs me my character? He sat on the same bench where his journey had begun years before. The bench had grown older. The trees were taller. Children laughed nearby, unaware of the battle taking place inside his mind. Ethan closed his eyes. He imagined two futures. In the first, he accepted the job. He became wealthy. People admired his title. But every morning he looked into the mirror and saw a man who had betrayed his own values. In the second future, he walked away. He kept his honesty. He remained faithful to the principles that had shaped him. His bank account might not grow as quickly, but his peace of mind would remain untouched. When the sun rose the next morning, Ethan already knew his answer. He entered the company's headquarters one final time. The executives smiled confidently. They expected him to accept. Instead, Ethan calmly said, "I appreciate your offer, but I cannot build my future by compromising my conscience." Silence filled the room. One executive laughed. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Ethan smiled gently. "No," he replied. "The biggest mistake would be becoming someone I no longer respect." He stood, thanked them for their time, and walked away. As the elevator doors closed, he felt something greater than relief. He felt freedom. Weeks passed. Some people called him foolish. Others said he had thrown away the opportunity of a lifetime. But Ethan never regretted his decision. Months later, something unexpected happened. A group of ethical entrepreneurs who had heard about Ethan's honesty approached him with a proposal. "We're building a company based on trust, integrity, and service," they said. "We need someone whose character is stronger than their ambition." Ethan accepted. Together they built a business that treated employees with dignity, customers with honesty, and success as the result of serving others rather than exploiting them. The company grew steadily. Not overnight. Not through shortcuts. But through consistent excellence. Years later, Ethan returned once more to the old park. The bench was still there. He smiled as memories filled his mind. The frightened man who had once sat there no longer existed. In his place stood someone who understood one simple truth. The greatest victory is not becoming rich. It is becoming someone who cannot be corrupted by wealth, fear, praise, or power. As the sun began to set, Ethan whispered the lesson that had guided every step of his journey. Your choices shape your character, and your character shapes your destiny. He realized that Stoicism had never promised an easy life. It promised something far more valuable: the strength to remain calm in chaos, the courage to do what is right when it is difficult, the wisdom to focus only on what can be controlled, and the peace that comes from living according to your principles. If there was one message Ethan wanted everyone to remember, it was this: one decision can change your life, but only if you continue making the right decision every single day. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary. That is how true strength is built. And that is how one decision can truly change everything. The end.